synthetic pesticides, with agrochemicals becoming a huge platform of economic trade. In response to this explosion of synthetic pesticide use, Congress enacted the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act of 1947. This new bill would replace the previously instated Insecticide Act of 1910 by creating a registered database of all pesticides distributed through interstate commerce, and was to be overseen by the United States Department of Agriculture. While this new legislation took a step forward by documenting and classifying pesticides entering the market, its main mission was to protect consumers from health hazards related to product use and to protect consumers from fraudulent claims made on pesticide labeling. After the introduction of FIFRA, three major issues with its role and implementation in the monitoring of pesticides became apparent. First, the registration process did not provide the Secretary of Agriculture with the means to restrict the manufacturing of any chemicals, even when deemed hazardous, only requiring that the product be registered with the USDA. Secondly, FIFRA was unable to regulate the application of a product as long as the product's label followed statutory requirements. And thirdly, the only action the administrator could take against a product was if that product was deemed as being misbranded. Legal actions often proved to be difficult since the USDA was required to build its own evidence against the product using its own resources. In response to these shortcomings, the USDA backed Congress in addressing these issues, supporting new amendments in 1964 that would allow the Secretary of Agriculture to modify the registration system to allow for the denial and cancellation of product registrations, and secondly, to require registrants to obtain scientific data proving that their products were safe and effective. In 1962, the publishing of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring led to a public realization of the environmental degradation that was occurring due to unsound societal practices. By the late 1960s, the environmental movement brought generous public interest to the large-scale use of agricultural chemicals. As a result, public outcry swamped the USDA's pesticide division, who was greatly underfunded at the time. Additionally, environmental groups also filed large numbers of lawsuits demanding the cancellation or suspension of a major group of pesticides in use. In 1970, President Richard Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency, and with its creation, the EPA was granted the responsibility of overseeing FIFRA's registration and implementation. Under the EPA, the mission of FIFRA transformed from the regulation of pesticides for reasonably safe use in agricultural production to the control of pesticides in order to reduce the amounts of unreasonable risks posed to people and the environment. In 1972, the Federal Environmental Pesticide Control Act, also known as FEPCA, was amended to FIFRA. In reality, FEPCA allowed Congress to completely overhaul the original 1974 FIFRA, its main focus being the strengthening of FIFRA's enforcement provisions, providing for a more flexible means to control hazardous chemicals, and to streamline FIFRA's lengthy registration process. FEPCA also created definitions for pesticide use classifications under general, restricted, or general and restricted use. If determined to be for restricted use, FEPCA mandated that the product be applied under the direct supervision of a certified applicator. In addition, FEPCA also allowed for the authorization of experimental use permits, the administrative review of previously registered pesticides, and for penalties to be given for statute violations. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed new amendments to FIFRA. The primary attraction to the 1988 amendments to FIFRA were they required a much faster turnaround in the pesticide re-registration process from the EPA, and that they authorized the EPA to collect fees for the processing of registrations. With the implementation of the Food and Agriculture Act of 1990, provisions were added to FIFRA that required all certified applicators to keep records of product use. And finally, the Pesticide Registration Improvement Extension Act of 2003, or PREA, was amended to FIFRA in an attempt to reduce the sizable amount of time needed for registration, processing, and review, and to make the chance of registration more predictable. Additionally, an increase in fees for large pesticide industry was implemented, and fee discounts were established for small businesses falling under certain operating criteria. While many issues are still present in FIFRA's registration and regulation process, FIFRA has allowed for the regulation of products hazardous to both human health and the environment, and have helped to sequester the explosion in the development and use of harmful products entering the market following World War II. With the development of new scientific methodologies allowing for a more detailed depiction of the effects of these products, the restructuring of FIFRA's mission and the changes in the role of the EPA in providing authority over the pesticide market are inevitable in order to meet societal demands, economic interest, and protect environmental quality.